This is Ben Bresky for Arut Sheva Israel National Radio on the internet at www.israelnationalradio.com. I am honored to be here with Mayor Nir Barkat in the mayor's office here in Jerusalem. And I want to jump right into it because I know you're very busy. But I live near the new bicycle path made on the train tracks, and I never before really walked through Beit Safafa, past the mosque, past those neighborhoods. And then in the other direction, the light rail goes through some other neighborhoods like Isawiya. And the city is changing, and I think you have a unique vision about all the different neighborhoods in the city and building in different neighborhoods and transportation through these neighborhoods. So what is your vision and thoughts on that?
Well, to understand the vision of Jerusalem into the future, best is to go back 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. To understand that when Jerusalem was at its peak with the Temple Mount in the center, Jerusalem was a united city that was not divided to tribes, that all people from all faiths used to come to worship God in Jerusalem. Jerusalem hosted millions of people throughout the year, from all tribes, Jews and non-Jews alike. Jerusalem was a destination for pilgrims all over the world with huge potential. The way Jerusalem managed and was the center of the world for 1,000 years is our future. A city that must not be divided to tribes or pieces. A united city that respects all tribes, that is open for people to come and worship their faith, their way. Sovereign, Jewish city that respects all different religions. So that philosophy of the past is our future. We're deriving our actions from that deep understanding of the role Jerusalem played 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. And we're developing Jerusalem to scale to more pilgrims, more tourists, to enable and make sure that all people from all faiths feel comfortable living in the city. We derive all our actions from that strategy. And so what you see today is we're rolling out a network of new public transportation, new trains, new roads that mesh the city and connect all pieces, all parts, in ways that enable people to move from anywhere to anywhere in the city, north, south, east, and west, visitors to Jerusalem, in the most effective way. And you see those investments in transportation and in parks and other investments we're making are all derived from that vision of how we see Jerusalem into the future.
Now, you talked about new investments in things, and some people think that the big tourist events are at the expense of the residents, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. But I want to get your perspective. For example, the Formula One race, some of the people running for election now are saying, but what about the poverty level? And where is the money apportioned? And maybe we're putting too much priority into building the new stadium and building the new this and that.
Well, look at this as an investment. In the last 5 years, Jerusalem surpassed Tel Aviv and Haifa in internal tourism. Today, you ask people in Tel Aviv, one of the nicest places in Tel Aviv to spend time is actually to take a car and go to Jerusalem and enjoy the city of Jerusalem. The fact that we are investing and creating Jerusalem attractive not only for the Jerusalem residents, but actually nationally and globally, increases the tourism, the growth in our economy. Has contributed a lot to the fact that Jerusalem has become an any place to visit from all over the country. And those investments translate to economy, a much better economy, to growth in our economy of 8% from year to year, to tripling the amount of new jobs in Jerusalem, to see lots of elements of Jerusalem become, quality of life is higher, therefore more people are interested to come and invest or live or visit. And so these are investments rather than anything else. And the return on the investments we have on returning the role Jerusalem played as the capital of Israel. We're bringing to Jerusalem what we for decades did not have, national and international events that must be played in the capital. We couldn't host those events in the past. And today Jerusalem can host an array of events that all the public in Israel, the government, not only the Jerusalemites, understand that Jerusalem should host the national and international events, and this is in many ways again derived from the role Jerusalem played 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. So when you look at those investments we're making, they're not on the account of other things we do. We have growth in investing in welfare, in education, in culture, in infrastructure. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not that you have to do one and you don't do the other. And one must see that the investments we're making in one area actually increase the collection we have in the national on the city level. Therefore, we have more capital to invest in other places. In other words, in a growing market, the growth feeds more capital that we can reinvest and make a better life. If there's no growth and other cities are developing fast and we're going backwards, you have from year to year less investments to make and you're continuing going backward. And thank God, today all parameters show that Jerusalem is going forward in economy, in everything we do. And I believe it's a combination of wise investments, both in culture, in education, and other things we're doing.
You know, you really talk like a businessman, and I think that's the difference between you and the others. They talk like a politician and their connection to other politicians, and you have a kind of a private sector outlook on it. And I want to talk about the Arab communities of Jerusalem. And this past year, you renamed some of the streets that never had names before. I interviewed him a couple of years ago, Yakir Segev, and he said something very interesting, which is if we don't invest money in the Arab communities, then Hamas will. And you think you're being more pro-Israel by ignoring them, but you're not. So you come at that from a business angle, I think.
Well, I agree with Yakir. We have to realize that investing and catching up with neglect that happened here for decades in a few neighborhoods, in the Arab neighborhoods, and by the way, we have similar catch-ups to do in some of the ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem, is good for Jerusalem. And when we decide to upgrade the infrastructure, catch up with classrooms that are beyond standard, below standard, and we have to create more classrooms, more schools. When I suggest to the municipal council of Jerusalem that we have to be honest and fair with all residents, including investing in the Arab residents, interestingly enough, it's widely accepted by all sectors, right and left in the municipality. And indeed, we've been catching up quite dramatically in some of the neglect and catch-up we have to do in East Jerusalem, in some of the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. I think it's the strategy. It's, by the way, it's in the Torah, in the halacha, that you have to work with Jews and non-Jews and be honest and fair with them. And in essence, what we're doing today is investing in all residents in Jerusalem, regardless of their religion. I think it's the right thing to do. And thank God, the whole council, all 31 council members from all different sectors agree that it's the right thing to do.
I don't mean this to be an attack, but I think part of the concern is that people don't want Jerusalem to be more like Paris or Rome or London because they're afraid that it's going to destroy the old world charm. Like some English friends I know, they say you can't drive in downtown and you have to have some kind of special permit to be a street musician. I think people prefer to be small in a way, in their mind, you know?
Well, first of all, I'm a Jerusalemite, and what we're doing is we're developing the potential of Jerusalem, which is second to no other city in the world. No other city in the world is the holy city, with such history, with such culture, spiritualism. And our goal is not to copy-paste from other cities. On the contrary, the phrase "Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah," if you really understand what it means, it's that things that are successful in Jerusalem that is not divided to tribes immediately gets propagated to all the rest of the world. So creating successful endeavors, ideas, may they be religious, may they be economic, social, or any other thing, successful in Jerusalem automatically means successful throughout the country of Israel, the Jewish state, and beyond. Successful meaning that people accept, that people understand, that indeed works well in Jerusalem, that is not divided to tribes, that all people feel something towards the city of Jerusalem. So what you will find is that we are tailoring ideas and thoughts special to Jerusalem, and you take something and you do it in Jerusalem in the proper way, like the Light Festival in the Old City, like the Marathon, like even Formula One, which is bring old to new to the old city of Jerusalem, that contrapunct that creates something that is that is strongly memorized and creates long, deep effect in people. So in many, many ways, we don't have to copy anybody else in the world. As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. And the thought leadership and the understanding that when you do things that are new, integrate other things in Jerusalem in a way that complements the city, that doesn't fight with its holiness, which I believe is the right thing to do, then you have the wow experience people have coming to Jerusalem. We want to maintain that. And so I think the Jerusalemites have to remember that our future relies on our ability to play the role Jerusalem played 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. The millions of people that used to come to Yerushalayim on different events were always accepted. Never was there no room in the city of Jerusalem for any pilgrim that wants to come to Jerusalem. And that spiritualism is part of the DNA of Jerusalem that we have to develop. So, and when residents tell me, it's a little bit tough when so many people come to Jerusalem, I remind them all, well, this is Jerusalem. We want to make sure that millions and tens of millions of people come and enjoy Jerusalem because it's the role of the city. And so I'm happy with the direction we're taking. Naturally, the investments we're making in building more hotel rooms, in building infrastructure, public transportation, fast train from the center of the country, 2 new lines, extensions, cable cars, all that to enable easier access, easier traffic, more jobs, more economy. And side by side to that, one must remember that economic boost throughout Jewish life also is aligned with religious and religious success. So things are going together in our world, and I'm very happy with the direction the city is taking.
Now I want to talk about some personal things, like where you grew up, maybe some memory of Jerusalem. I interviewed another candidate, and unfortunately, he only wanted to talk about the current events issues. And I wanted to get some, what about the first time you went to the Kotel, or what about your high school? What was it like to grow up?
Well, first of all, I'm a Jerusalemite all my life. I lived in different neighborhoods in Jerusalem. I remember living next to Derech Hebron. It's a neighborhood that doesn't exist today. It was Machane Allenby, right opposite Derech Hebron, where there's a gas station today, the Paz gas station. And I lived there until the age of 10. The 67 war started a few hundred yards from our home in Armon HaNatziv. And I remember as a child, 7 years old, in the front line in Jerusalem when the war started. I remember the bombings. I remember our neighbors, unfortunately some of them were wounded and we had to evacuate them. I remember filling sandbags with the soldiers pre-war. And that was a major memory of mine in Jerusalem as a child. Then we moved to Givat HaMivtar, next to Ramat Eshkol. Had a wonderful time there until the age of 26. And I did 6 years in the army. I'm a paratrooper. As a young officer, I was shot in Lebanon in a raid in 1980. My company commander was killed next to me, and I recovered, and I became a company commander myself in 1981. And as a matter of fact, I was a company commander in the 890 Brigade in the Lebanese War. So I had quite extensive experience there. I remember myself sometimes going back home from Lebanon back to Jerusalem. I remember the experience of going back and forth home, back to the front in Beirut, and Beirut-Damascus road that I spent a lot of time as a company commander then. Eventually, after my army career, I was in the high-tech sector for 15 years. Traveled a lot to North America, Europe, all over the world, and actually developed my skills as an entrepreneur and a businessman, and as business development and classic management. And in many ways, my profession is taking dreams and ideas and fulfilling them. And once I've done for my home, my wife and I, we decided to invest here in Jerusalem. As philanthropists, we invested a few $1 million in the education system, computerized a few dozen schools in Jerusalem, founded the non-for-profit called Snunit, which is a joint venture with the Hebrew University, which is one of the largest non-for-profit educational websites. Through that, I got engaged with the public sector, with the municipality, with schools. Our goal was to give other children the opportunity my wife and I had as children here in Jerusalem, and to upgrade and enable many, many kids to exploit their potential. And through that engagement in education in Jerusalem, I got exposed to the challenges of Jerusalem. The negative migration, the poverty, lots of methodologies of how the system worked, which I thought were not as good as the city deserves. I felt that the city is moving away from its potential rather than exploiting the city's potential, as I shared with you at the beginning. So I decided 12 years ago at the age of 42 to retire from all my business career. I put all my business aside, and I'm focusing only on one thing as a life mission, which is how to use my skills that I've gathered throughout the years from the army, from as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as a business person, as a manager. How do I deploy all those skills and knowledge and experience to help exploit the potential of Jerusalem? And I sat 5.5 years in opposition after I lost my first elections, stuck around, invested 100% of my time preparing myself for the life mission. As I got elected, I fulfilled lots of the plans that I said I will do. And thank God we've got some positive momentum. And now I plan to spend the next 5 years, very hard years, taking Jerusalem to the next step.
Thank you very much. Sounds like you're, part of Startup Nation, a soldier that becomes a businessman, and now you're giving back to the people.